On today's episode, we're installing our cab locker. Stay tuned. Hey everybody, Matt here for AVC and welcome back to the shop. Like we said in the intro, today we're gonna be installing this cab locker. And if you're not familiar with the cab locker, let's take a look at some of the details. So one of the first things you'll notice about the cab locker is this triangular shape down here at the front. And that is so that we get a flat level surface in between your two front seats. So it does get narrower here at the front of the cabin, and then it's nice and tall here at the back. This actually flushes out just below the height of your swivel seat. So you can still swivel your seats around the top of this if you need to. And it's also nice and sturdy so you can walk on it. So we do get a lot of questions. This is 3/16 aluminum, and it is more than sturdy enough for any adult-sized person to walk on top of, dance on top of, whatever. We designed it with that in mind so that you can enter or exit your cabin up front and walk through to the back of the van. Taking a look at this side, this is the passenger side, or what would mount to your passenger side seat. You're gonna notice a couple of things. One is this funny shape here at the front, and that is in case you have the outlet on the side of your seat base. So if you wanna keep that outlet functional and you don't wanna remove it, you can just cut the little tendons along the outside of this, and then this will mount right over the top of that outlet, and you can still function and use that outlet from the inside. On top of the lid here, you'll notice there's this little cutout, and that's so you can have your laptop charger on the inside and have that wire coming out so you can keep this closed and locked, but still have the power coming up and use it whenever you need it to. The next thing you'll notice over here on the passenger side are all these holes, and these are how you're going to install this unit. So this is meant to through bolt to your seat base on your passenger side. And there are no holes like this on your seat base, so you're gonna have to match drill these. So you're gonna see that installation process here coming up in the second half of the video, but just keep in mind that that's what those holes along this side are for. Over here on the driver's side, we don't have any of those holes, and that's because the driver's side seat base is really full of battery and components and things like that. And so ideally, you don't have to bolt this in on the driver's side, but every van is slightly different, and that's one of the funny things about Ford. The tolerances aren't that tight, and so you might need a bolt on this side, but the main securing side is the passenger side. Then we might put 1 or 2 bolts on the driver's side to just even it out and keep it tight. I've installed them both ways. So I put this one in my old show van, and all I had to do was bolt it in on the passenger side. It sat nice flush level, and everything was fine. We did one for a customer, and we had to mount a couple of bolts through this side just to hold it nice and even in between the two seats. Now it is a tight fit here, so most likely we're gonna have to loosen the seat bases and just adjust things out a little bit just to get this thing to fit. That's gonna be another quirk about different vans. Some we've been able to just slide in between, others we have to loosen the bolts and just adjust those seat bases out ever so slightly. Looking inside, you can see in here, lots of big storage space inside. You'll see this extra lip here, and that's just to provide nice support for the locking lid on top. And then you'll notice this is a keyed lock. So, when you want to secure this item, you go ahead and you just lock it like that. And now this is nice and secured. You can keep something in here that's out of sight, out of mind. We don't market this as a safe, and that's because, safe in my mind has like a extra level of threat protection or something like that. This is just to have another legal locking place for maybe some ammunition or something like that you need locked away for different states' legalities, or just a safe place to put a laptop, lock it, so it's nice and safe as you go out for your hike. When you throw a jacket over the top of this locker, no one would ever know it's there, and it's definitely an out of sight, out of mind kind of bonus. The next thing I want to point out about this particular unit is it has some scratches. We took this one to a trade show a couple of weeks ago. It got scratched on the way there, and so I'm going to install it in my van. That's the beauty of being the owner of the shop here. I get some of the scratch and dent stuff. So to make it look a little bit better than this, we're going to put some EVA foam on top of this. I thought the EVA foam was kind of nice, keeps things from sliding around on top, and actually did this to my other van. So let's go ahead and install that with you right now. All right, so my first step is gonna be degrease this thing. This is just some isopropyl alcohol. I'm gonna wipe all the dust and dirt and grease and fingerprints and all that kind of thing off of here. That way we make sure our foam has a nice clean surface to bond to. I had this locker standing up in the back of the van next to one of our trim and steps, and I didn't think about it, and I drove off from the shop, and it just fell over and hit the corner of one of the trims. So it damaged it, which is kind of a bummer, but once we put this foam on here, it'll look good as new. Okay, so I laser cut this EVA foam in the shop, and you can see it's kind of a nice little fit right here. So in order to get everything registered nicely, we're gonna do this old sign maker's trick. And this is the time to get everything adjusted just right, exactly where we want it. And this EVA foam, because it comes on a roll that's super tight. It's hard to get it to comply when it's still got the backer on. Once it's peeled off and stuck, it holds pretty well. Or, you know, it doesn't hold that curve or curl or anything like that in there anymore. Okay, so I like that. That looks pretty good. Cool. Cut that. Put this here. So if you're not familiar with this EVA foam, it goes by a brand name of C-Deck, is one of the brands I've seen out there. I've seen some people using it in van builds and things like that for walls and ceilings and stuff, which is cool. Here at the shop, we don't use it for any of that, but it is a cool piece to have around. We actually have put it inside of some of our aluminum overhead cabinets, and it's an easy way to keep some things quiet inside those cabinets, so your gear doesn't rattle around on you. So there's the center of our lid. Just push it down, make sure we got a nice seal on there, everything. Okay, and then I have a little trim ring for the top two. This should be a little bit easier to tape or to get on there just because it's not gonna be as curled. So this is, like I mentioned, this is like a sign installer's trick. I used to work at a sign shop, and this is called the hinge method. So you get everything lined up the way you want it. You put your hinge down, then we can break the tape on one side, peel it back, and install it exactly where we want. All right. Our EVA deck is now installed on top of this, and we're ready to go out to the van and get this thing installed. I'll see you out there. So we're now back outside here at the van, and we're gonna get this thing installed. And our first step is going to be removing our passenger seat. But before that, it is almost 100 degrees out today, and so it's pretty hot. We're gonna go ahead and take the lab coat on. I know, you guys are gonna be disappointed, but we'll keep it here in frame. And if you're wearing your lab coat at home, maybe take it off if it's over 100 degrees. So on my passenger seat here, we have the Alpine Mechanisms swivel seat. So it's gonna be 4 hex bolts here in the corners. Let's go ahead and get those taken out. And I wanna take these out first before I disconnect the power to my electric seat. Because once I disconnect power to my electric seat, I'm not gonna be able to move it back and forward. So we're gonna pull these bolts, then we'll disconnect power to the seat, and we'll set that aside. All right, we got that passenger seat out of the way, which gives us a little bit more room to work here. So let's go ahead and slide the cab locker into place and see how it's gonna fit. And it looks like we have plenty of room between the seats, which is great, but because I have the electric seats on this side, or on both of these, this plastic is gonna be a little bit too low. Now I've already trimmed them on the passenger side because we have that swivel seat and you gotta trim them anyway, but it looks like we're gonna have to trim this driver's side. So let's go ahead and grab our oscillating multi-tool and we're gonna trim this off. So I've adjusted my driver's side seat up as far as it'll go. And then if you feel behind here, about that far up, there's a metal bar and that supports this plastic here. So we're just gonna trim right to the bottom of that metal bar. So you can measure behind there and feel it. If you have a measuring tape, you can measure it. I have a Van Life Trader business card here in the shop. I'm just gonna use that. So I'm just gonna slide it behind here till I hit that, make a little mark on there, and then I know that that's the height of my bar. Okay, so I'm just gonna make a couple of marks there. And I'm gonna pull a piece of tape here. So that metal support bar does dive a little bit further towards the front here, so ignore that mark. But I'm feeling behind here, and I think this top of this yellow line is gonna be just about right. We'll pull some real measurements after we cut this off and make sure everything's kosher, and we'll load it into the description on the video. Okay, so let's go ahead and grab our multi-tool, and we can trim this thing flush. So now that this is cut, let's just go ahead and deburr that plastic. We want to just kind of get it as even as we can. So I'm also going to do a good job of cleaning this area up. This is probably the last time it's going to see daylight in quite some time. So let's go ahead and get that extra mud out of there. All right, now that the bottom of our driver's seat is trimmed, let's go ahead and refit this in. Okay, so this is about where I want it to fit. I actually want it to get flush with the S-bar trim here, but it looks like I'm gonna have to trim some of my Husky liner up here as well. If you have one of these big floor mats, like a WeatherTech floor mat or a Husky liner, or the Ford factory one, probably gonna have to trim some of the center console section right here. So we're just gonna shift this back exactly where we want it. And I like mine planed out here with the S-bar trim. And that looks just right. So I'm just gonna go ahead and take my silver Sharpie. Okay, I'm just gonna run it here along the edge. Trace my Husky liner down. Okay, and then we'll pop this out and go ahead and cut this with a knife. We have that silver line I just made, and I think really all we need to do is trim this lip, but I'm gonna cut it just a little underneath here because I think this thickness will be okay to stick underneath the cab locker. So I'm just gonna cut from here and give myself a little bit of relief. I also don't want it stuck underneath the cab locker so that if I do want to pull this out in the future and clean it, it's not wedged underneath there. Let's go ahead and clean underneath here. And test fit this again. All right, that looks pretty good. I'm flushed out here at the front. Everything is nice and planed in together. And I can open this up. You can kind of see how it starts to operate now. So once we have our cab locker placed where we want it, we can just go ahead and mark all those bolt holes on the inside here. Okay. Right here. So with our holes marked now, we can go ahead and pull this cab locker out of the way. There she goes. Okay, slide this out of here. And we can see the marks that we have here on the side of the seat base. Should have 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 at the bottom. So let's go ahead and match drill all these out, and then we'll get this thing ready for install. All right, so I have this center punch here, which is a nice thing to have at the shop. If you don't have something like that, that's fine. Maybe if you have a small drill bit, you can start it with a small drill bit, just to make sure you're pretty accurate. This is nice. It just gives us a centering point for the drill to catch on. Take one of my crummy shop rags and stuff it down here. That way it'll catch some of those metal shards. So this was an 11/64, which is basically a 5/16. And I want it a little bit bigger because I want to have a little bit of room here for adjustment. So I'm going to go ahead and use a step bit and open this up one more step. All right, now that our holes are sized correctly, let's just go ahead and prime these up. Any exposed metal, we always want to make sure we prime. So we're going to prime all 5 of these holes inside and out. Just make sure everybody's nice and sealed. Then the last thing is I kind of scuffed some of the metal work on this side. So I'm just going to make sure we get some primer on that bar there. Let's go ahead and let that kick for a second and we'll get this installed. All of our holes are primed now. So we can slide our locker into place. Yeah, looks pretty good. Go ahead and open this up and we'll throw some hardware in here. So we do include 5/16 stainless hardware. So let's put a washer and a 5/16 through each one of these holes on the inside. Then on the inside of each one of these, we'll put another 5/16 and a nylock bolt or nut on here. Right, that last bolt is nice and tight and this thing is solid in there. Let's go ahead and get this seat mounted and call this job done. Make sure you get all 4 corners started before you start tightening anything down. And with our seat back in place, this install is complete. As you can see, we have quick access to everything we need inside the center console, and we can easily lock it with a key here. And now all those valuables are safe and secure. This thing is also sturdy enough that we can walk over the top of it. We can dance on it if we want to. We can get back into the back area, and we're not worried about anything with this locker. It's gonna be nice and stout for all of our adventures. If you're interested in picking one of these lockers up for your transit build, go ahead and check out the link in the description below. If you haven't yet subscribed, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. If you learned something today, hit that like button, and we'll see you on the next episode.